When Johnny comes marching home again, hurrah, hurrah, we'll give him a hearty welcome then, hurrah, hurrah. Oh, the men will cheer, the boys will shout, the ladies, they will all turn out, and we'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home. And we'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home.
And welcome back to another episode of the History is Lit podcast. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Stephen E. Cockman. As a former Union soldier, I'd like to teach you all a thing or two about our most recent war, that of course being the Civil War, where we crushed the Confederates, or Feds as I like to call them, and ended slavery once and for all. Let's begin. First, I'm going to cover the weapons, with the most widely used strap being the rifle. Back in those days, everybody had a rifle. They were a little bit better than the original muskets, but they were generally still pretty trash, looking back on them. The rifles had groves on the inside of the barrel, which meant better accuracy and momentum for the bullet fire. The Colt revolving rifle and the Springfield rifle were the most popular. With the fire new rifles came new and improved bullets known as mini balls. Those were kind of fire too. The mini balls were made out of lead, which was a soft metal, so they flattened as soon as they entered the body, making them deadlier than the average bullet. They could also be loaded in about an eighth of the time. The standard sidearm used was the revolver, which was slow and difficult to reload. They reloaded just like muskets, except you had to do it like 6 times to fully reload them, making them a burden to even use. Their range wasn't even that good compared to the rifles, so most people just ditched them. But to be fair, they could have been used in a pickle. They also looked kinda cool, to be honest. We were generally ahead of the Feds in most things, but one of the things that they beat us in was the use of modern landmines. So that was kind of garbage. Now that we got the weapons out of the way, let's talk about the actual state of the war. This wasn't your average run-of-the-mill just shoot at each other and call it a day war. This one was taken to the next level. We call this total war. President Lincoln and General Ulysses weren't the biggest fans of this idea because they're kind of soft, but eventually they were convinced. We went for their towns, their people, captured cities, pretty much anything in sight would have taken an L. It was pretty hardcore. The Feds couldn't handle it. What was that? You've never heard of Ulysses S. Grant? Well, you're in for a true heroic story. He started off at West Point, where he was a mediocre student at best, but eventually grew to become the star-spangled man with the plan to take the Feds straight to the can. And bam! We got a dub. Basically, this was a dude that everybody wanted to be. Probably even the females, to be honest. He's our most acclaimed general, and the youngest president we've had so far. That's right. He was basically a president out of the womb. He was born to do this. Ulysses got dubs at Shiloh, Vicksburg, and Chattanooga. Now let's talk about General Grant's main op, Robert E. Lee. You probably heard that name before. He was the Fed's go-to guy when they needed a victory, and he usually delivered, to be fair. He went to West Point just like Ulysses, but unlike General Grant, he was catching major W's there. Whereas Ulysses was kinda a garbage student, Robbie Boy graduated second in the class. On top of that, he didn't get in trouble once while he was there. That's right, not one time, so you know he was probably a kiss-up. He didn't kiss up to no one on the field, though. He's said to be a brilliant tactician who even contributed to the victory we took in the Mexican-American War. Lee won battles at Bull Run, Fredericksburg, the list goes on. His greatest win was said to be at Chancellorsville, where there was a combined roughly 30,000 casualties. All this doesn't matter, though, because we still gave him the L in the end. One fun fact about Lee is that he was buried without his shoes on. That's not relevant, but I just wanted to say that. Now, I know what you're wondering. How do we manage to keep ourselves alive in this bloodbath that we call total war? The answer to that is the Red Cross. Clarissa Harlow Barton, known as Clara to most people, was the founder of this medical group that brought supplies and support to soldiers during their times of need in the war. And before you ask, it was generally looked down upon to shoot at medics, unless it was either an accident or you were just a jerk, which most people were. After the Union released the Emancipation Proclamation, the Confederates retaliated by sending out a statement that all black soldiers for the Union would be forced back into slavery if captured, and if they wore a Union uniform, they would just be dropped on the spot, and any generals in control of a black army would also be executed where they stood. This led to the devastation at Fort Pillow, where Union troops surrendered, but the Feds kept shooting, and they slaughtered them. Why the Feds did this is beyond me, but it's okay, because in the end, we handed them a hot, steaming L. Now, I know what your next question is going to be. Where were all the strong-willed, gorgeous, courageous women that weren't Clarissa Barton in this war? The answer to that is pretty much exactly what you'd expect it to be. Women fighting in the war was extremely looked down upon, as the women were supposed to be at home raising the next batch of troops. But what you might not know is that several ladies dressed up as dudes in order to fight for their country. To this day, I still don't know how they pulled this off. Maybe they just talked in really deep voices. It was still pretty lit if you asked me. Other than that, females in the war were pretty much just nurses, as you'd expect. Alright. I know what you're all thinking. Dr. Cockman, I didn't pull up to the Civil War podcast to hear you talking about what actually happened in the Civil War. Get on with it. Well, don't worry. I got you. Let's go on to life during the Civil War, starting with the clothes. Fashion was generally Victorian in nature, because America can't do anything for themselves and we steal all our ideas. Most fabric was used to make uniforms for the war, so do-it-yourself styles became really popular. High-class women tended to take inspiration from the Europeans, sporting large, extravagant hoop skirts with bows, ribbons, and etc. They also wore several dresses a day, like a morning dress, an evening dress, you get the idea. Lower-class women sported solid colors because plaid and other patterns were expensive, even though they were ugly. Men held up their pants using suspenders and wore loose-fitting wool vests, a style that became very popular for both everyday and dressy attire. Professionals wore loose-fitting suits. Facial hair was pretty popular, but mustaches, sideburns, goatees, and lamb chops and stuff like that were much more popular than full-on beards. Believe it or not, sports also existed. Athletic activities included wrestling, boxing, racing both on foot and on horse, cricket, baseball, and leapfrog. Almost every sport was gambled on. It is also said that on occasion, get this, people would bowl using cannonballs to knock down wooden pins. The last topic I'm going to go over today was the music. Now, as you would guess, there wasn't that much music on the battlefield. Psych, that's where you're wrong, and I just finessed you. There would often be a drummer boy that played to signify the start of a battle. It was looked down upon to shoot at them, as you'd expect. Music played a part in boosting morale, and soldiers would sing well-known tunes as a form of bonding. The soldiers also woke up to the tune of a bugle every day and went to sleep to the sound of light drum tapping. Alright, that's going to be all for today's podcast. To learn more, visit my website at https://swagmoneycockmanswebsite.com/podcast/history/historyislit/Civil War. I wish you all a good day, and to all my loyal fans, have a great summer.